SBC Media.
Brazil, a global economic powerhouse, deeply passionate about sports, and now home to one of the hottest markets in gaming. And we're giving it the full SBC treatment. Join industry leaders, market experts, and all the major players in the country for 3 days of content, exhibition, and epic networking at the first ever SBC Summit Rio.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of iGaming Daily, sponsored by SBC Summit Rio. Now, usually I'd introduce myself as the host, along with the topic set to be discussed. However, today is a special episode of the podcast as we have a very special guest. We have Andrea McGeachin. Did I say that right, Andrea? Andrea McGeachin.
You're almost there, James. You're almost. Don't worry. Yeah.
The CEO of NeoSurf, who will be taking over the reins from me and hopefully doing a better job than my introduction.
Never.
It's a low bar, Andrew. I think you can top this one. But, with that, I will bid you all adieu and leave you in the capable hands of Andrea, who will introduce the topic and her guest for the podcast. So, Andrea, over to you.
Thank you, James. So, I'm not the special guest. The special guest is my good friend, Bill Pascrell the third. How are you, Bill?
Doing wonderful, Andrea. Thank you so much for having me.
That's okay. What time is it there? It's literally, I'm talking to you at about 3:15 here in the UK. So I can't remember. Yours is 5 hours, I guess.
5 hours, even though we set the clocks back, I think you did too, possibly.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
We're all aligned. It's a little past 10 a.m.
Little past 10 a.m. Oh, cool. You can still keep drinking coffee.
I am.
Bill, why don't we start? We're telling the audience, what's the third about? In your name.
Oh, I
love this story when I first learned that. It's a good story.
You're wonderful. I want to also thank SBC, always a true champ. And thanks to Rasmus from SBC. I had the good fortune to meet you, Andrew, but we'll tell that story later. So my granddad, God bless him, God rest his soul, was born in Caserta del Vecchia in Italy, came over here on a ship as a young lad, 6 years old. When he came to New York, as he's coming off the boat, somebody must have taken a fancy to him, liked him or whatever, and changed our last name. Our last name would have been Pasquarello. They took off the I-O, they added an L, and they did that, Andrea, and you're very familiar with this type of situation, what your culture and ethnic group have gone through. I guess somebody took a fancy and said, this poor young lad who's Italian with the vowel, let's change the last name. Maybe it'll give him a jump start. So my granddad worked, never educated, worked on the railroads in America, building railroads. And very proud to say there's a very famous national railroad called Erie-Lackawanna, which goes from New Jersey to Pennsylvania out west. He ended up with a crazy job with no education, no formal learning at all. He was the head of tariffs for that railroad, which is quite remarkable. A true, like your story, I wouldn't say rags to riches, but I would say fighting up and realizing the American dream. He's Bill Pascrell Sr. My dad, who's a U.S. congressman, former school teacher, been a congressman for 30 years, a politician, elected official, Democrat. He is Bill Pascrell Jr., and he's 87 years old. I am 59, and I'm Bill Pascrell III. And as you know, there's a Bill Pascrell IV,
yes,
IV, working in our industry.
Yep, there is. So we've got at least the third and the fourth in the industry. And some great history there. I love this story because because it's got the third on it. It's always like, you've got to understand what that's about. And I know that we're going to talk about RG, responsible gaming, today.
Right.
But just a quick thing. How did you get into gaming? You've been fundamental in how it's changed and how now online gaming in the States is there, but why did you get into it?
You're very generous and kind to give me these nice questions, Andrea. Very proud of my heritage and my family. Like I said, my dad is a school teacher. So we came from very, very modest means. My parents still live in the house I grew up in, not in the best of neighborhoods. But when I grew up, I wanted to do two things. I wanted to either be a pilot or a baseball player, and I was a very good baseball player. And
didn't know that about you, Bill.
When I was 16, playing baseball, it was the summer, July. I had a major health issue. I contracted spinal meningitis. My mother saved my life because she picked me up from an Italian restaurant I was working in at 11 p.m. I was complaining about migraine headaches, and she immediately took me to the hospital. Now, normally migraine headaches, go to bed, get some water, you're working, stress. And I remember to this day, my mom and dad sitting outside St. Joe's Hospital intake room, and the doctor saying, "I don't think he's going to make it through the night." You know, your senses get more acute as you're starting to fail, right? I remember that. That was the last thing I remember because I went into a coma. 16 years old, 45-day coma, went from about 140 pounds. I don't know how many kilos that is. I'm not that smart. But I went down to barely 78 pounds. When I came out of that coma, it was like a new lease on life, and my world changed. I developed juvenile diabetes. I realized I'd never play baseball again, and diabetics cannot become pilots. So I had maybe 4 or 5 hours of flight lessons. That was all scrapped because of my medical condition. I had to think about other things. But the benefit of what I went through made me aggressively interested in doing things and getting stuff done. And I was very fortunate. My dad played baseball professionally in the AA and AAA leagues. His parents wanted him to be a lawyer, my granddad and my grandmother. And so I decided that since Dad didn't do it, I was going to make Dad proud, and I was going to do it. Went on to law school. And then I worked in politics. And then I joined, after one of the politicians I was working for, the governor of New Jersey, I was his attorney at a very young age. I joined the firm I'm with now, and that was 30 years ago. And my first gaming client was Donald Trump. I didn't bring it in. One of the partners brought it in. And there's a whole story about that, but we have to get into the main topic.
That's a different podcast.
That's a different podcast for sure. So that was my first gaming client. I represented all 3 casinos in Atlantic City, Taj Mahal, Trump Plaza, and Trump Marina. That was a bit of a challenge. I started to get more into the industry and represented all the casinos in Atlantic City, Foxwoods, Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, and most of the casinos out in Vegas as a brick and mortar lawyer lobbyist. And then my life changed in 2009-10 when I got into the online world, thanks to a gentleman I will never forget, Joe Brennan. And the rest is history.
The rest is history. Now, you see, I wanted to talk about those things because the history gives an understanding of why you're so passionate about RG. And you and I have sat in little coffee shops, big coffee shops, expo booths, just a few bars, not many, a couple of restaurants, selling the scene, isn't it? But we started to talk about our own personal passion about the sustainability of this business. And I you know that I've got my views on how the payment companies should be doing more. But the responsible gaming side for me is just, it's the right thing to do. We've got all sorts of issues here in Europe where trying to get the equivalent of RG balanced Obviously looking after the players, but the arduous paths in different countries that the operators are going through. But I wanted to focus today, if I could, on the US, because this is what we're talking about. And DSF were really, really honoured back at G2E to be the first payments company to join the Responsible Gaming Coalition. And I just want to share a couple of things. That I went with our CEO North America and myself, and we were like school kids entering in a room with some serious operators there and wondering whether they were going to like us or not like us, because are they looking at us coming in as a supplier? I've never been in such a genuine, honest, open session in my life. Really, really committed to try and get things right. And so I was really impressed with that, and I'm very proud to be a member of that coalition. But it's got strong principles, 12 principles the coalition talk about. Should we just talk a few bits about that? And I'm thinking about how I mean, we trying, everybody's new at it, and we're trying to get everything working, aren't we? So there's a lot of hurdles to cross, but just touch on a few of the principles, I guess, and it's all about player protection and the sustainability of the business. You talk strongly about sustainability, and it's a word that resonates with me all the time. I mean, it's important, I think. We've got to make it right. We've got to follow the mistakes we've got going on in Europe, really.
Yeah, that's a very great way to tee up the issue. So I am so thrilled that I was able to introduce you to a client of mine for a long time, Martin Litschka. Martin is an amazing individual.
He's a great guy. Yeah.
Oh, he's wonderful. He's born and raised just outside of Prague in the Czech Republic. He met his beautiful wife, Francilia, in London, and they lived there for a few years, had their first daughter, Isabella, and then he decided, because Entain gave him the opportunity to come to the Americas to head up Entain's regulatory and RG and integrity practice. And so he moved over here 2 years ago, almost to the date, mid-November, with his wife. They live in Jersey City, New Jersey. Help them find their apartment, help them get their citizen status all sorted, or their papers. And they're loving it here. They're about to buy their first home in America. They still have a home back in London, which they're renting out. But, Martin, who I've known for about 5-6 years now, brought me into this concept he created with the Entain board to create a foundation called the Entain Foundation for Responsible Gambling. And it's not just words like many companies tend to do, is just throw something out there, check the box, and we're good.
Yeah, let's not just tick a box. That doesn't do anything. Yeah,
it doesn't. But a lot of companies do that because it makes them look good, but they're really not contributing. Sort of like what we're doing in the energy space now. You really have to commit and dig down deep. So Martin created this foundation. He asked me to go out and find him another member who was a former professional athlete. So I've known a couple dozen athletes over the world, but one of the ones I'm most impressed is a guy by the name of Amani Toomer, who you'll get to meet very soon, Andrea. He's on the board with us. Amani went to Michigan. He grew up in California, lives in Jersey now. He played for the New York Giants, has a Super Bowl ring against the Patriots. He beat the Patriots with the Giants. Amani was a very successful wide receiver. But what's more important than his on the field accomplishments is he is an absolute gentleman, smart, humble. And when we pitched him about RG, he told us about his experience in the locker room when he went to college. It was just a check the box. A coach came in and said, guys, don't bet on your own games. You shouldn't bet. That was it. It's like, hey, don't drink booze. Yeah, okay, who's going to listen to that? Like, you have to educate people. So Amani, Martin, and I have been doing all kinds of things. Part of that project has also been supporting Martin create this coalition for responsible gaming with the sports betting industry. We have all the tier 1 operators have joined. You're the first payment processing company to join.
We are, we're honored, absolutely honored,
Because everybody's saying, like, why would a payment process company care about that? Well,
that's when I get on my pedestal, isn't it? We'll talk about that in a minute, I think.
Yeah. So part of the coalition has been to develop principles that the regulators have all embraced, and they're not very complicated principles. They're very top line, commonsensical, but what we're trying to do is get people in without controversy so we can further develop principles. And this is not ever bulletproof. It's an ongoing process. So principles like you promise not to work with anybody who operates in the black or gray markets. You're going to be licensed. You're going to take care of your consumers. You're going to check, put technology in place to check their ongoing behavior. Things like that. Very basic principles to support responsible gaming, because not only is it the moral imperative, right? It is, but it's also the commercial imperative. Your company is not going to be sustainable if, I'm talking about operators, if you operate your company the way many American casinos, brick and mortar, operated for decades. And that is when Bill Pascrell is one of our customers and we see he's going off the rails, we're going to treat him as a VIP customer. Who cares what's going on, whether he can afford it or not? And that's where the problems lie. What Martin has developed is an understanding and appreciation that we have to look at the player who we spent money to acquire as a long-time sustainable player. And the way to do that is to make sure he's healthy or she's healthy.
So that you see there, that you can hear the passion. That's the passion that I believe in and understand it. And then I get into my little piece for me. And the reason why we joined that coalition is because I do believe that I'm a payments company and my team and I serve the online gambling space. And I went through those 12 principles that the coalition has. And Sue, our CEO North America, and I sat there and said, but this is something we should be doing too. And so there are a load of things. There's some simple things that we can simply do and add and share data with, like the age verification. There's self-limits and self-limits across the operators, not just within the operator, because our wallet will go across. People will be probably anything from 2 to 4 operators, and we're committed to that. But there's another thing, Bill, for me. There's another thing that is, we're near surf. We're still small in the scale of the Visas and the MasterCards and the PayPals, etc. And I'm not naming those names for any particular reason. But I do believe that all of us, and there's the processors out there, I think the payments company need to come to the table and support. And I see more of it happening, to be honest. I can see parties coming forward. And I think my role here from the coalition is to help the coalition engage with other payments companies so they can establish what they can do. Because potentially gambling is a certain percentage of their business, and what is it I can do? And I was only having this conversation last week, and we were talking away about, but you can make sure that any adverts you're putting out there to the consumers is in line with an RG principle of, let's make sure you're taking care of them. There's no reason why all your team should not be trained about RG. All those things. And it's the data sharing that's at the core of it, really. We've got data. Payments is when people are putting the money into the operator. We're not doing the wager. I know we're not placing the wager, but the money's going in to place that wager. So we can be caring as well from our side, and our communications and how we help the players, and supporting Prohibit, and being involved in across the Prohibit and adding that data so we've all got that through. But I really do want I call them sometimes you might say it's competitors, but I don't. I call them our colleagues in the industry. come to the table, let's help, and it is about making sure that this is done properly. We're all the payments companies go, well, my regulator isn't the gambling regulator. Well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. I'm operating in the gambling space. I went to the G2E and I could have open conversations with the regulators. And conversations where they'll come over to me. Do you remember Sheen from New Jersey comes over and says, how are you doing? How's the product? Introducing me to people and wanting to be engaged in that. And how's that? What are you going to be doing? How's that going to go? So I love the fact that that's a cross engagement. And I find that the regulators that I speak to, I mean, my favourite, sorry, Shane, is obviously June Taylor from Ohio. She'll always be my favourite. Engaged, I love that woman. We have to take our position and support the operator. We're a part of this ecosystem that is there. We're dealing with exactly the same player. That player is using the payment mechanism to put the money into the operator. We have an ability to support the operator in their RG plans. And that's why we've gone in. That's why we said, yes, please accept us into the coalition. But we're not ticking a box. Now, this sounds a little bit as if I'm up on my pedestal, and I am a little bit, but I do think that we've got an opportunity here in America to get it right. I think we've got an opportunity to learn from other areas. I mean, poor operators in the UK reviewing all the white paper, etc. Good intentions from the Gambling Commission, absolutely, very much so, and for the right reasons. But it's difficult to try and understand how to put it in. And this is Safer Gambling Week here in the UK, so there's a lot going on. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's putting content out there about it. But you're right. When you show that passion, it's like, no, let's make sure we're looking after them. That's just absolutely vital. It's so important. Do you think it's going to work?
Well, a couple of things. I want to say, and I should have said this earlier, but, thanks to Rasmus for being so kind to invite me 2 ices ago to a dinner at the River Cafe in London, where I met you. And I've been in your company quite a bit since then. But look, I want to say this publicly because I've said it to you personally and privately, but I mean it. Sometimes people say a lot. I say what I mean and mean what I say. You're extraordinary. You're with a company that is sensitive to hardcore issues, but you're hardcore people too. You're successful globally. You have a sense of why it's important to have a diversity and inclusion. You're a woman-run business, which is very rare, period, extraordinarily rare in the gaming industry. I appreciate that. More importantly, then you shock me when you start to talk about your interest in RG. And you've given me far more than I've given you because I wasn't even thinking about payment processing companies in this space. So, yes, I think we'll be successful. No, I do not think it's going to be easy. I think it's going to take a lot of hard work, a lot of convincing, because as we know, Andrea, and you know this far better than most, every black market operator and those that service them in the payment space or other verticals are making massive money without all the regulatory costs. Regulatory costs are a huge burden to your business, but it's the price you pay if you want to be the gold standard and viable and legal and regulatorily compliant. So this is not like snap your fingers, we're going to get it done. It should be obvious to folks, but it isn't. And so now we're trying to get not just the operators, but all of those in the supply chain, KYC companies, geolocation companies, payment processing companies, affiliates, B2B businesses, to all understand the operators go down and don't embrace this, you're going to suffer because you're going to lose business. So that's the game. And never did I think I'd be involved in RG. And, I've had a couple of tough times. I told you the story when I came back from Budapest early October, got off the plane, drove down to a compulsive gambling conference. I was the keynote speaker, 400 people in a room. The regulators are there. The lottery's there. The attorney general's office is there. And I got publicly pilloried because a lot of folks there thought I am a major part of the reason we're having so much problems with gambling addiction. And I explained to them, can you imagine if we didn't regulate it? You wouldn't even know what the problems were. We know the problems because in a regulated regime, you can track behavior, you can monitor it. And so we had a really good conversation. I never expect to get up and have applause and have everybody agree with what I say, but it was a really good debate. And we're going to continue debates and hopefully move the dial.
Yeah, move the dial. But, it is that whole position of doing that together. Every time I go into different panels, because only this morning I was sitting talking to our head of content, and she's putting this stuff together about what we're putting into LinkedIn or whatever we're putting on our web about Safer Gaming Week. I said, but it's not just about the UK Safer Gaming Week. It's generally about the industry. And she says, yeah, you're right. So we should talk about RG. And I just so got excited that our head of content calls it RG now.
There you go.
She knows.
There you go.
Right? There she is. She said she's a home-based. Used to be an editor. She's so clever. She's brilliant. And big call out to her if she's listening to this at some point. She's really understands stuff, and she really does get it. And getting the way I'm seeing it with my team, and they're listening to it. And we do lunch and learn sessions once every other month, and it was all about compliance this month. And it's like, bloody hell, how am I going to get on with that? And it's such a dry thing to talk to the whole company about. We made it fun. It was a workshop, and we had a good smile about stuff, but they all knew what we were talking about. That's what we've all got to do. And if it's the same thing, the more we can do it together, the easier. The togetherness has been isolated in Europe, and we've got our own issues with different payments in a payments world. Yeah, we've got another new EU directives coming out. And it's hard work. You're right, it is hard work. But it's hard work for a reason. But the more you can work with a regulator, the more you can work with the partners that are in the industry, the more we can actually get it right. It doesn't need to be arduously hard work at all. And somebody said to me a few weeks ago, I said, do you enjoy it? I said, I love it. I love it. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I do. And I do love it. And I think it's important. I know you say about us being involved in it and wanting to be involved in it, but it's our industry too. It's our industry too, and we're bringing a payment in, and we've got a lot to do on that, but it's really cool.
You had just asked me if I think it's going to be successful. I gave you my answer, but I want to give a little bit more color. David Reebok, who is globally known, he's the regulator, the director of the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement, which is the first state in the nation to do iGaming, was the state that took the case all the way up to the Supreme Court to bring sports betting outside of Nevada, first state to do exchange wagering and horse racing, first state in the nation to do betting on esports, and first state in the nation to do fixed odds horse racing. So that in of itself, all accomplished under Dave Reebok's tenure. He said to me, Bill, what's success look like? And I gave him my explanation. And he said, interesting. How do you know you've accomplished it? I said, Dave, I asked you just a few months ago, and this was earlier this year in January. I said, I asked you a few months ago at the end of 22, if a client of mine whose key license holder left the company, and the key license holder was the head of regulatory affairs, I said, Dave, I asked you if I could have the head of RG be the key license holder. And you said to me, Bill, what are you kidding me? The head of RG in any company goes into a board meeting and everybody looks sideways at that person because they feel like that person, he, she, whatever, is getting in the way of them achieving their bonuses and their revenue marks because they're talking about dialing it back and being careful. I said, Dave, when you permit me or another regulator to have the head of RG of a company become a key license holder, I think that's when we've accomplished something. And that's the problem, right? I mean, if the CEO like you of a company and Sue Page in the Americas, we need more people like you to take it seriously so that it's not just a conversation, but it's action and engagement. And that's my parting thought on that.
So I know we've run out of time. I could keep doing this forever. I'll tell you what I'll have to do, Bill. I'll have to get on a plane and come and see you again. I'll have to do that. Somebody taught me earlier on in my career, so I'll just put this as a closing point because I strongly believe in it. You've got passion about it, and I'm just so, it's infectious, and I so believe in this, and that's why we got on straight away, because we were on the same path of this passion. But I was told by, and he's not an old boss, he's still going, but the long way is the short way. So the answer to us is that, do it properly, and you'd be amazed on the results.
Absolutely.
And I used to be a very impatient commercial manager when I used to get wound up with the software developers, really, and go, I want it now. I need it now. You're not getting it now. It's got to be developed. And I learned. And he told me the long way is the short way. Yeah, that stuck with me throughout my career. And it's absolutely smart on this bit as well. But I'm really honoured to be working with some amazing, passionate people who've committed. And if June Taylor does ever listen to this, she's the one who told me back in SBC North America, no ticking boxes. Don't come and see and tick the boxes. You make sure you're not just ticking boxes. And I said, we don't do that. I promise not to do that. And that's what we've just talked about.
Exactly.
It's been a pleasure, man. Been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Andrea, for having me on your show. Thank you, SBC. And Andrea, I look forward to seeing you hopefully before then, but at a minimum, I'll see you in London in the winter. You will.
Back to the Italian restaurant. Thank you so much. Thank you, James. And it's been really good to talk. I could have been here for hours.
SBC Media.